To me, marketing is about values. This is a very complicated world. It's a very noisy world. And we're not going to get a chance to get people to remember much about us. No company is. And so we have to be really clear on what we want them to know about us. Now, Apple, fortunately, is one of the half a dozen best brands in the whole world. Right up there with Nike, Disney, Coke, Sony. It is one of the greats of the greats, not just in this country, but all around the globe. And but even a great brand needs investment and caring if it's going to retain its relevance and vitality. And the Apple brand has clearly suffered from neglect in this area in the last few years. And we need to bring it back. The way to do that is not to talk about speeds and feeds. It's not to talk about MIPS and megahertz. It's not to talk about why we're better than Windows. The dairy industry tried for 20 years to convince you that milk was good for you. It's a lie, but they tried anyway. And the sales were going like this. And then they tried Got Milk, and the sales are going like this. Got Milk doesn't even talk about the product. Matter of fact, it focuses on the absence of the product. But the best example of all, and one of the greatest jobs of marketing in the universe has ever seen is Nike. Remember, Nike sells a commodity. They sell shoes. And yet, when you think of Nike, you feel something different than a shoe company. In their ads, as you know, they don't ever talk about the product. They don't ever tell you about their air soles and why they're better than Reebok's air soles. What does Nike do in their advertising? They honor great athletes and they honor great athletics. That's who they are. That's what they are about. Apple spends a fortune on advertising. You'd never know it. You'd never know it. So, when I got here, Apple just fired their agency. We were doing a competition with 23 agencies that, 4 years from now would have picked one. And we blew that up, and we hired Chiat, the ad agency that I was fortunate enough to work with years ago. We created some award-winning work, including the commercial voted the best ad ever made in 1984 by advertising professionals. And we started working about 8 weeks ago. And the question we asked was, our customers want to know who is Apple and what is it that we stand for? Where do we fit in this world? And what we're about isn't making boxes for people to get their jobs done, although we do that well. We do that better than almost anybody in some cases. But Apple's about something more than that. Apple, at the core, its core value, is that we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. That's what we believe. And we've had the opportunity to work with people like that. We've had an opportunity to work with people like you, with software developers, with customers who have done it in some big and some small ways. And we believe that in this world, people can change it for the better. And that those people that are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that actually do. And so what we're going to do in our first brand marketing campaign in several years is to get back to that core value. A lot of things have changed. The market's a totally different place than it was a decade ago. And Apple's totally different, and Apple's place in it is totally different. And believe me, the products and the distribution strategy and the manufacturing are totally different, and we understand that. But values and core values, those things shouldn't change. The things that Apple believed in at its core are the same things that Apple really stands for today. And so we wanted to find a way to communicate this. And what we have is something that I'm very moved by. it honors those people who have changed the world. Some of them are living, some of them are not. But the ones that aren't, as you'll see, you know that if they ever used a computer, it would have been a Mac. And the theme of the campaign is think different. It's the people, honoring the people who think different and who move this world forward. And it is what we are about. It touches the soul of this company. So I'm going to go ahead and roll it, and I hope that you feel the same way about it I do.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them. Because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
I've always considered part of my job was to keep the quality level of people in the organizations I work with very high. I mean, that's what I consider one of the few things I actually, can contribute individually myself versus the team that I work with is to really try to instill in the organization the goal of having only A players. Because in the field that I'm in, like in a lot of fields, the difference between the worst taxi cab driver and the best taxi cab driver to get you across town Manhattan might be 2 to 1. Best one will get you there in 15 minutes, the worst one will get you there in half an hour. Or, the best cook and the worst cook, maybe it's 3 to 1.
Sure.
Pick something like that. In the field that I'm in, in software in particular, the difference between the best person and the worst person is about 100 to 1 or more. The difference between a good software person and a great software person is probably 50 to 1, 25 to 50 to 1. Huge dynamic range. And therefore, I have found, and not just in software, but in almost everything I've done, it really pays to go after the best people in the world. It's painful. It's very painful when you have some people that are not the best people in the world, and you have to get rid of them. But I found that my job has sometimes been exactly that, to get rid of some of the people that didn't measure up. And I've always tried to do it in a humane way, but nonetheless, it has to be done, and it's not ever fun.
Is that the hardest and most painful part of managing a company from your point of view?
Oh, sure, of course.
The greatest people are self-managing. They don't need to be managed. Once they know what to do, they'll go figure out how to do it, and they don't need to be managed at all. What they need is a common vision, and that's what leadership is. What leadership is having a vision, being able to articulate that so the people around you can understand it, and getting a consensus on a common vision. We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did, but we're not necessarily those seasoned professionals, but who had at the tips of their fingers and in their passion the latest understanding of where technology was and what we could do with that technology, and who wanted to bring that to lots of people. So the neatest thing that happens is when you get a core group of 10 great people, it becomes self-policing as to who they let into that group. So I consider the most important job of someone like myself is recruiting.
Do you know who Alexander the Great's tutor was for about 14 years? Aristotle. And I read this. I became immensely jealous. And I think I would have enjoyed that a great deal. And 3 through the miracle of the printed page, I can at least read what Aristotle wrote without an intermediary. And maybe if there's a professor, they can add to that, but at least I can go directly to the source material. And that is, of course, the foundation upon which our Western civilization is built. But I can't ask Aristotle a question. I mean, I can, but I won't get an answer. And so my hope is that in our lifetimes, we can make a tool of a new kind, of an interactive kind. And so my hope is someday, when the next Aristotle is alive, we can capture the underlying worldview of that Aristotle in a computer. And someday, some student will be able to not only read the words Aristotle wrote, but ask Aristotle a question and get an answer. And that's what I hope that we can do.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it, and you don't really love it, you're going to give up. And that's what happens to most people, actually. If you really look at the ones that ended up being successful, unquote, in the eyes of society and the ones that didn't, oftentimes it's the ones that are successful loved what they did so they could persevere when it got really tough. And the ones that didn't love it quit because they're sane, right? Who would want to put up with this stuff if you don't love it?
My model of business is the Beatles. They were four very talented guys who kept each other's kind of negative tendencies in check. They balanced each other, and the sum was greater than the total was greater than the sum of the parts. And that's how I see business. Great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people, and we've got that here at Pixar, and we've got that at Apple as well. The Beatles, when they were together, they did truly brilliant, innovative work. And when they split up, they did good work, but it was never the same. And I see business that way too. It's really all.
I think that without owning something over an extended period of time, like a few years, where one has a chance to take responsibility for one's recommendations, where one has to see one's recommendations through all action stages and accumulate scar tissue for the mistakes and pick oneself up off the ground and dust oneself off, one learns a fraction of what one can. You're coming in and making recommendations and not owning the results, not owning the implementation, I think is a fraction of the value and a fraction of the opportunity to learn and get better. And so what you do get a broad cut at companies, but it's very thin. It's like a picture of I'm a vegetarian, so I won't use steak, but it's like a picture of a banana. You might get a very accurate picture, but it's only two-dimensional. And without the experience of actually doing it, you never get three-dimensional. So you might have a lot of pictures on your walls. You can show it off to your friends. You can say, look, I've worked in bananas, I've worked in peaches, I've worked in grapes, but you never really taste it. And I think that's what I think. You're also a variable expense, and in hard times you find yourself.
Like many young Californians, Stephen Jobs has a penchant for the Western casual and a love of the scenic outdoors. And in the Silicon Valley, Jobs is the classic example of the computer industry's philosophy, which says, take a chance, you've got nothing to lose. 6 years ago, working in this garage, Jobs and a high school classmate quit their positions at large electronic companies and using tiny silicon chips built this small computer board. It became the technical core of the Apple computer and led to a $250 million business and the most popular typewriter-sized computer on the market today. Jobs is now only 26 years old, is Apple's chairman of the board, and is successful, he says, because of the Silicon Valley's entrepreneurial risk culture.
The penalty for failure for going and trying to start a company in this valley is non-existent. There really isn't a penalty for failure either psychologically or economically, in the sense that if you have a good idea and you go out to start your own company, even if you fail, you're generally considered worth more to the company you left because you've gained all this valuable experience. When you sort of get something, it's very easy to go into cover your ass mode, and then you become conservative and vote for Ronnie. So what we're trying to do is to realize the very amazing time that we're in and not go into that mode. And I think Lisa's a reflection of that. I mean, we gambled the company on Lisa. If Lisa had bombed, Apple would be just one more computer company. And we gambled everything on it. We had no backup to it. Everything went into that. For 3.5 years, the best and the brightest at Apple worked on this product. Now, how come they came to Apple to work on this? We hired these people from other companies. And the reason they came to Apple was because they knew what to do. But the companies they were working for wouldn't take the risk and do it. And we said, come to Apple and build this. And they said, well, who do I have to convince to do that? Nobody, just go do it. And we got a collection of, I think, some of the finest computer scientists in the world that just went and did it. Yeah. Good question. I'm not sure I learned this when I was at Apple, but I learned it based on the data when I was at Apple. And that is, I now take a longer-term view on people. In other words, when I see something not being done right, my first reaction isn't to go fix it. It's to say, we're building a team here and we're going to do great stuff for the next decade, not just the next year. And so what do I need to do to help so that the person that's screwing up
Most
learn?
people don't get those experiences because they never ask. I've never found anybody that didn't want to help me if I asked them for help. I always call them up. I called up, this will date me, but I called up Bill Hewlett when I was 12 years old, and he lived in Palo Alto. His number was still in the phone book. And he answered the phone himself. He said, yes? He said, hi, I'm Steve Jobs. I'm 12 years old. I'm a student in high school, and I want to build a frequency counter. And I was wondering if you had any spare parts I could have. And he laughed, and he gave me the spare parts to build this frequency counter, and he gave me a job that summer in Hewlett-Packard, working on the assembly line, putting nuts and bolts together on frequency counters. He got me a job in the place that built them. And I was in heaven. And I've never found anyone who said no or hung up the phone when I called. I just asked. And when people ask me, I try to be as responsive, to pay that debt of gratitude back. Most people never pick up the phone and call. Most people never ask. And that's what separates sometimes the people that do things from the people that just dream about them. You gotta act. And you've got to be willing to fail. You've got to be willing to crash and burn. With people on the phone, with starting a company, with whatever. If you're afraid of failing, you won't get very far.
We read about the story in Esquire magazine about this guy named Captain Crunch who could supposedly make free telephone calls. You've heard about this, I'm sure. And we were captivated. How could anybody do this? And we thought it must be a hoax. And we started looking through the libraries, looking for the secret tones that would allow you to do this. In the corner bottom rack, we found an AT&T technical journal that laid out the whole thing. And that's another moment I'll never forget. When we saw this journal, we thought, my God, it's all real. And so we set out to build a device to make these tones. And the way it worked was, when you make a long-distance call, you used to hear right in the background? They were tones that sounded like the touch tone you could make on your phone, but they were different frequencies, so you could make them. It turned out that was the signal from one telephone computer to another. controlling the computers in the network. And AT&T made a fatal flaw when they designed the original telephone network, digital telephone network, was they put the signaling from computer to computer in the same band as your voice, which meant that if you could make those same signals, you could put it right in through the handset. And literally, the entire AT&T international phone network would think you were an AT&T computer. So after 3 weeks, we finally built a box like this that worked. And I remember the first call we made was down to LA, so one of Woz's relatives down in Pasadena. We dialed the wrong number. But we woke some guy up in the middle of the night, and we were yelling at him like, "Don't you understand, we made this call for free?" And this person didn't appreciate that. But it was miraculous. And we built these little boxes to do blue boxing, as it was called. And we put a little note in the bottom of them. Our logo was, "He's got the whole world in his hands." And they worked. We built the best blue box in the world. It was all digital, no adjustments. And so you could go up to a payphone and you could take a trunk over to White Plains and then take a satellite over to Europe and then go to Turkey, take a cable back to Atlanta, and you could go around the world. You could go around the world 5 or 6 times because we learned all the codes for how to get on the satellites and stuff. And then you could call the payphone next door, and so you could shout in the phone, and after about a minute, it would come out the other phone. It was miraculous. And you might ask, well, what's so interesting about that? What's so interesting is that we were young, and what we learned was that we could build something ourselves that could control billions of dollars worth of infrastructure in the world. That was what we learned, was that us two, we didn't know much, we could build a little thing that could control a giant thing. And that was an incredible lesson. I don't think there would have ever been an Apple computer had there not been blue boxing.
It's been 10 months since a new management team took over at Apple. People have been working really hard. You can see a lot of cars in the parking lots some nights and the weekends. And because of their hard work, I'm really pleased to report to you today that Apple's back on track. And because of this, with the foundation this gives us, we're going to announce some great new products today. And we're even going to roll out the whole product strategy today. We do that. I just want to spend a few minutes and take you through some examples of how Apple is back on track. The most important thing, of course, is people. Apple's got now a very wise board of directors. Apple's got a very strong senior management team. I would hold the senior management team at Apple up against any other in the industry. But most important, Apple's got some very talented employees. Just incredibly talented people. And when you have great people, the most important thing is to not lose them. When I came back to Apple last summer, Apple was losing a lot of them. The attrition rate annualized was 33%, which meant that if Apple kept losing people at that rate, in a year, a third of them would be gone. And I'm very pleased to say that 10 months later, the attrition rate is 15%. And that is under the Silicon Valley average today. And that's a very good sign. And part of that is because people now see how Apple can win again. Another part of that is because we've made Apple a much more entrepreneurial place. All of the key employees have lots of stock options. Another key thing that we've done is distribution. We've made a lot of changes in the way Apple distributes its products, a lot of tune-ups across the distribution system. And of course, one of the bigger ones was at the national level, partnering with CompUSA. They're the biggest, and they decided to reinvest in Apple, and it's worked out great. As you know, they put an Apple store within a store in each of their approximately 170 stores throughout the U.S. When we started this program, Apple represented 3% of the CPU revenues sold by CompUSA. 6 months later, Apple represents 15% of the revenues of CPUs sold at CompUSA. Another area that we can gauge to see Apple's health is the Internet. Apple.com. How many people are interested in Apple? Now, we've got over 20 million active customers. They might be interested in coming to our website. We have tons of prospective customers who might be interested, a lot of suppliers, a lot of software developers, a lot of competitors. And so this taken together can give us a general thermometer of what is the interest level of people about Apple. And we've invested a lot into the website and a lot into the award-winning Apple Store, which is the gold standard of e-commerce now on the web. And a year ago, we had 1 million hits per day. Now, the average visitor clicks about 5 to 10 times, so that's 100 to 200,000 visitors per day. Today, 9-10 months later, we have 10 million hits a day on the website. That's 1 to 2 million visitors a day coming to the Apple website. And they're coming because they're interested in Apple. Growth. The quarter that ended December, IDC reported that Apple had a 3.4% market share. The quarter that ended in March, we actually grew our market share 15% to 4%. Now, we're not thrilled with 4% market share, but if we can grow our market share 15% every quarter, we will see it going in the right direction, which it is now. And I think we expect it to rise quite a bit more based on some of the things you're going to see here today, but it is now going in the right direction again. And finance. We have some pretty ambitious plans. We want to develop a lot of great products. We want to market them. It takes money. And our customers need to know that Apple's going to be here 10 years from now. Well, we were able to turn the company around to profitability. The first quarter, the management team was in place. And the quarter ending December, Apple turned a profit of $47 million. The last quarter, we turned a profit of $55 million. So the company has made over $100 million in the last 6 months in a very turbulent time in the industry when other companies are breaking even or even losing money. And I think that's a great accomplishment for the company. In addition to that, the company is growing cash. We increased the cash to $1.6 billion by adding $100 million in the quarter that ended December. And for the last quarter that ended the end of March, $200 million more was put in the bank. This is really important. And lastly, last July, if you took the number of shares outstanding and you multiplied it by the stock price, the company was worth $1.8 billion. We've added $2 billion to the worth of the company since then, and I think it's just getting going. So these are some indications about how Apple is back on. So we went back to Business School 101, and we said, what do our customers want in our products? What kind of products do they want? And they wanted two fundamental kinds of products. They wanted consumer products and they wanted pro products. Our design and publishing customers primarily wanted the pro products. Our education customers primarily wanted the consumer products. But they also wanted two different kinds of each one, desktop and portable. And we looked at this and we said, now, this looks pretty simple, but we couldn't find a way to come up with anything else that captured what they wanted as succinctly and as clearly as this. We said, finally, this is it. We've got to make 4 great products, and we can meet the needs of what our customers are telling us they want. And we've spent the last 10 months working like crazy to try to do just that. So the first one was the desktop pro product, right? The core of our publishing market. And of course, we introduced that product in November based on the G3 chip. It's a Power Macintosh G3. And we've had exceptional success with this product. We've sold over 500,000 of these in the first 6 months of the product's life, making it the most successful new Mac in Apple's history. The team did a superb job on this product. It's based, of course, on the PowerPC G3 chip, which is a screamer. Now, its competitor, of course, is the Pentium 2. And what is remarkable, what's hard to fathom, but true here, is that for a given clock rate, a PowerPC chip is twice as fast as a Pentium 2 chip. In other words, a 266 megahertz G3 is twice as fast as a 266 Pentium 2. Or a 266 G3 is equal to about a 500 megahertz Pentium 2. Of course, you can't even make one of those, but if you could, that's what it would be equal to. A 300 megahertz G3 chip is equal to a 600 megahertz Pentium 2. Now, how do we know this? We know this not only by using the systems, but we got the best independent benchmark there is, which is Byte Magazine's Byte Marks. And these are sort of one of the gold standards in the industry of performance. And they publish the results. And here's the results. The blue bars are the 266 and 300 megahertz Pentium 2s, and the bars on fire are the G3s. And they just toast them. And as a matter of fact, Intel, we've been running some ads, as you know, Intel went back to Byte Magazine and said, this can't be true. And Byte Magazine examined all of their tests, and they stood by their results and republished them. Now, Intel has since come out with a 400 megahertz Pentium 2. How does that stack up? Not much better. Not much better. And so, when we run these ads, they're very effective in our testing. And they're effective because they're true. We are extremely happy today to introduce a totally new PowerBook G3. This thing has been redesigned from the processor to the keycaps, and it is going to set the new gold standard for portables out there. It is hot. It's also very beautiful. This is a side profile here, and this is what it looks like from the back. The back of this thing even is gorgeous. And, one other thing. It eats Pentium notebooks for lunch, too. And it's got options on displays. It's got a 12-inch display that's 800 by 600, same as the high-end Apple portables do now. But it goes further. For the first time in Apple portables, it goes beyond 12-inch displays to a 13-inch 1024 by 768 display, and that same resolution in a 14-inch display. 12, 13, and 14. In addition, this thing is incredibly modular. It's built with these two bays. And so you can put one battery or two batteries in. Each battery gives you 3.5 hours of battery life, so you can have up to 7 hours of battery life with two batteries. You can also put in a floppy disk drive, a CD-ROM, a DVD-ROM drive, or a third-party zip drive in there, and the bays are all hot swappable. The batteries are designed with a special feature. Just push a little button. It tells you exactly the state of the battery, whether it's in or out of the computer. And it's got the best keyboard of any portable we know of out there. Now, this thing is powered by a G3 chip, so it is a screamer. And it comes in 33, 233, 250, and 292 megahertz. So we're putting our fastest chips into these things, which we can do because ours don't draw very much power, and you don't have to fry an egg on them. And so we went out and said, okay, how does this stack up against the other Pentium notebooks out there? We found the fastest Pentium notebook you can get. Matter of fact, they're really hard to get because they can hardly make them. And we had one flown in special. This is the latest, greatest one, a 266 megahertz P2. And these are the byte marks, right? 3.9. Let me show you the 3-speed ranges of the new G3 PowerBooks. So I'd like to invite Phil Schiller, our Vice President of Worldwide Product Marketing, on the stage to help me with some demos. Phil?
Hi, Steve.
Good to see you.
Tell us about your computer here, Phil.
Well, I'm glad here to come out and try to take you on head-to-head because you asked me to go out and get the biggest and the best, and I did. This is the brand new compact Armada 7800. There are thousands of Windows customers waiting in line right now to try to get their hands on this computer. Luckily, we flew someone down to LA and got one before anyone else could, leaving plenty of Windows customers in the lurch because they couldn't get this very machine. It's got a Pentium 2, the new mobile Pentium 2, 266. That's the fastest speed it runs at. It's just been announced, just come out. It has a 512 backside cache. It has advanced graphics port, AGP from Intel, with very fast 64-bit graphics. So this has the fastest processor, the fastest notebook graphics, and Compact's really excited to bring this to the whole Windows market. You can't get much better than this.
I'm scared. So we're just going to have to find out. Now, up on this screen on your left, we have the Compact Armada. It's a $5,400 machine, as fast as you can possibly get. Pentium 2 266. In the middle, we have our new PowerBook G3 running at 233 megahertz. And on the far right, we have the G3 running at 292 megahertz. Of course, both of these machines are less money than the compact. So let's go ahead. What we're going to do now is we're going to run two demos. The first is going to be a demo of Photoshop, what a lot of our customers like to do and have been dying to do on a fast portable. So we've got Photoshop here, and we've got exactly the same file on all of these computers. The file has got 40 Photoshop actions in it that happen automatically, and it's about 27 megabytes. Exactly the same file. So we're going to get this queued up on all three machines, and we're going to have a bake-off here.
And Steve, this is a great demo because even a lot of the Intel people show off Photoshop to take advantage of the fast MMX processing in the Pentium 2. So same demos Intel does, we can do cross-platform.
All right. You ready to go?
Sure.
3, 2, 1, go. Here we go. We're racing through those 40 actions right now.
Compositing, cropping, throwing on blurs, doing the types of actions Photoshop customers do every day.
Boy, the 292 is really in the lead here. Let's see. Done. 292 is done. 233 is getting close. Done. And God, Phil, your Pentium there is still entertaining us.
I think I can.
Fastest Pentium notebook in the world, ladies and gentlemen. And it's almost done. It's done. Yay! Okay, our second demo is we've got Macromedia Director here. And Macromedia Director is used by a ton of our customers for multimedia presentations on the road as well. And we've got, again, a 30 megabyte director file. Not that big. And it is exactly the same file on all the machines. So we're simply going to play it on these machines.
And they're great demos because they exercise the graphics, the processor, the cache, the entire system to really get the most of the multimedia performance.
Okay, so here we go. Macromedia Director, 30 megabyte file, exactly the same file on all three machines. Ready, set, go. Done. Done. Thank you. Well, today, I'm incredibly pleased to introduce iMac, our consumer product. And iMac comes from the marriage of the excitement of the Internet with the simplicity of Macintosh. Even though this is a full-blooded Macintosh, we are targeting this for the number one use that consumers tell us they want a computer for, which is to get on the Internet, simply and fast. And that's what this product is targeted for. I also means some other things to us. We are a personal computer company, and although this product is born to network, it also is a beautiful standalone product. We're targeting it also for education. They want to buy these. And it's perfect for most of the things they do in instruction. It's perfect for finding tremendous source of information over the Internet. And we hope, as you see the product, it will inspire us all to make even better products in the future. So we think iMac's going to be a really big deal. Now, what should it be? Well, we went out and we looked at all of the consumer products out there. This is a picture of one of the better ones. And we noticed some things about them pretty much universally. The first is they're really slow. They're very slow. They're all using last year's processor. Very, very slow. Second is, they've all got pretty crummy displays on them. They're generally 13-inch, a few 14-inch, and the quality of them is very poor. Apple designs all its own displays, so we're used to something much better, but these are pretty bad. Likely no networking on them. Some have it, most don't. old generation I.O. devices. And what that means is they're lower performance and they're harder to use, and most of them aren't, so plug and play. And these things are ugly. So, let me tell you about iMac. We decided to make this thing fast. So we decided to put in a G3 processor running at 233 megahertz. We debated this quite a bit because there were cheaper, slower things we could have used, and we said, no, this has got to be the computer that we want on our desk too. A G3 running at 233, and we didn't forget the cache. It's got a 0.5 megabyte L2 backside cache on it. This thing screams, as you'll see in a minute. On displays, we said, what is the largest display that you'd ever want in one of these in a consumer computer? And the answer to us was a 15-inch display running at 1024 by 768. Let's go ahead and build in the best in every product. And let's have our display engineers engineer it, and it's gorgeous. It is an Apple quality display that we are very proud of. Let's go ahead and put a lot of memory in this thing. 32 megabytes standard. It's expandable to 128. 4 gigabyte disk drive, 24x CD-ROM. And let's build in a lot of communications. This thing's got 100 megabit Ethernet as standard. Now why? Because a lot of our education customers want to put these high-speed networks in, and because we're seeing it in homes. Approximately 10% of the homes in Silicon Valley now have Class 5 wiring in them. We're starting to see lots of home networks emerging. A fast modem and also 4 megabit infrared built in. You want to beam your digital photographs in from your digital camera, built into every product. We are going to the new generation of I.O. 12 megabit universal serial bus, 2 ports. We're leaving the old Apple I.O. behind. Stereo surround sound built into every product, and a great, great keyboard and mouse. Now, this is what they look like today. And I would like to take the privilege of showing you what they're going to look like from today on. This is iMac. Can you go back there and do that again? Go back and come back. Thank you. So if I can get this screen switched over, we've got a wireless camera here, and I'd like to show you what this thing looks like. Come on in. You've got to see this thing in person, but I'll do the best I can with video. This is iMac. The whole thing is translucent. You can see into it. It's so cool. We've got stereo speakers on the front. We've got infrared right up here. We've got the CD-ROM drive right in the middle. We've got dual stereo headphone jacks. We've got the coolest mouse on the planet right here. Come on around. All of the connectors are inside one beautiful little door here, the Ethernet, the USB stuff. Around the back, we've got a really great handle here. The back of this thing looks better than the front of the other guys, by the way. And then around the side. So let's take one more swing around it so you can see. This is what it looks like. And again, you've got to see one of these things in person. Great. Yeah, I've got some slides of what this looks like, too. I mean, this is incredible compared to anything else out there. It looks like it's from another planet. And a good planet. A planet with better designers. Look at this keyboard. It's so nice. 2 universal serial bus connectors on either side, so you can plug the mouse into whichever one you want, whether you're right or left-handed, and you have the other one for peripherals. Look at this mouse. It's the most wonderful mouse you've ever used. Tell us about your computer, Phil.
Well, as Steve mentioned, we went out and got the hot new compact Presario 4540, and it does have an AMD K6 233 megahertz MMX optimized processor with a 256K pipeline cache on it. In fact, Compaq advertises this as a third faster than most all other 233 megahertz products. And of course, we have a 233 megahertz product too, and we'll see if it is a third faster. But this is the best thing you can buy in this class of products, and customers are just eating them up.
Well, great. Well, I have an iMac. And so why don't we put them through their paces? So let's take that same Director demo again, Director 6.0, and let's get these machines ready to go, and we'll see which one's faster. Now, over on the left, again, we've got the Compaq with the K6 233 in it, the most popular and fastest consumer computer out there. And on the right, we have iMac.
Well, I'm ready for you, sir.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Come on. It's playing.
Do you want to put it out of its misery or let it go?
Yep. And I got the fastest consumer product you can buy at any price. It's the brand new Pentium 2 400 megahertz MMX processor and the Compaq Presario 4880. And over $2,500, that's without networking. There's no networking that comes with it, and that's without the monitor before you add that. So when you add those things, it's over $3,000. And this thing has a 100 megahertz memory bus, a half a mega pipeline cache, 2x accelerated graphics port graphics, so it doesn't get any bigger or badder than this.
Well, I have an iMac. So we've got the consumer K6 233, the fastest, meanest, baddest Pentium 2 you can buy, 400 megahertz, and iMac. All right, Phil. 3, 2, 1, go. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Steve.
If you want to hire great people and have them stay working for you, you have to let them make a lot of decisions, and you have to be run by ideas, not hierarchy. The best ideas have to win. Otherwise, good people don't stay.
Chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all of the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them.
You know, you can please some of the people some of the time, but and one of the things I've always found is that you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room. And I've got the scar tissue to prove it. And I know that it's the case. And as we have tried to come up with a strategy and a vision for Apple, it started with what incredible benefits can we give to the customer? Where can we take the customer? Not starting with, let's sit down with the engineers and figure out what awesome technology we have, and then how are we going to market that. And I think that's the right path to take.
My model of business is the Beatles. You know, they were 4 very talented guys who kept each other's kind of negative tendencies in check. They balanced each other, and the sum was greater than the total was greater than the sum of the parts. And that's how I see business. You know, great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people, and we've got that here at Pixar, and we've got that at Apple as well. The Beatles, when they were together, they did truly brilliant, innovative work. And when they split up, they did good work, but it was never the same. And I see business that way too. It's really always a team.
Somebody taught me a long time ago a very valuable lesson, which is if you do the right things on the top line, the bottom line will follow. And what they meant by that was if you get the right strategy, if you have the right people, and if you have the right culture at your company, you'll do the right products, you'll do the right marketing, you'll do the right things logistically and in manufacturing and in distribution. And if you do all those things right, the bottom line will follow. So yes, we have obviously plans about where we'd like to see the bottom line, but we are focusing most of our energy not on financial re-engineering, because that's not what's been troubled at Apple. We're focusing our energy on the right product strategies, the right market strategies, the right communication strategies, the right logistics and distribution strategies. And the team is making, I think, very strong strides in these areas. And you'll start to see some of this stuff appear, in the next 90, 120 days. So I'm actually really happy about this.
And what's your biggest weakness?
I think all of us need to be on guard against arrogance, which which knocks at the door whenever you're successful.
Have you lived through that?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
Now, by that, correct me if I'm wrong, you had an incredible high with the initial success of Apple, and then other competitors get in, and it's sobering.
Well, as you may know, I was basically fired from Apple when I was 30, and was invited to come back 12 years later. So that was difficult when it happened, but maybe the best thing that ever happened to me. There wouldn't be a Pixar if that hadn't happened. And so, you know, you move on, life goes on, and you learn from it.
We're at the end here, but you were fired from Apple when you were 30. Asked to come back when you were, what, 42?
Mm-hmm. Did
you think at that moment how sweet it is?
No, I thought at that moment, what a circle of life. You know, life is just always mysterious and surprising, and you never know what's around the next corner. So
we have to presume any time we do a story that most of the audience hasn't, that any time you introduce any subject or any topic or any big word, really, that you have to familiarize the audience with. Right. You were talking about 60 Minutes. They do the same thing. Sure. Harry Reasoner did a piece on some guy who was a card counter playing blackjack a couple of weeks ago, and they spent about 3 minutes in the context of the story establishing how to play blackjack.
Right.
Just the fact that you have to
sure, go for 21.
Yeah,
right.
Go for 21. So
yeah, that's
we make the same.
An interesting thing about television is it always seems to shoot for the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. Steve, in order to get a two-shot that we need, it sounds a little peculiar, but you can, and it'll be painless and over quickly.
Great.
Thank you.
I could embrace him if you wish.
No. The reason they take these two shots is because they do all of this market research on television, and they go into a shopping center and grab 50 viewers and put them in a trailer and show them tapes, and to try to find out what they like and what they don't, what bothers them and what doesn't. One of the things that they found bothered viewers was in the typical nightly, just like to see the environment that you're talking in. So hence the wide shot.
Yes.
Is it over?
Yes, that painful part is over.
Steve, when you began to develop this 5 years ago, what sort of need did you see that existed then that you felt these computers was going to fill?
Well, basically, are we actually doing this now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. The question is really, what is a personal computer? And why is it different than all the other computers that have existed throughout history? Probably the best way to explain that is through an analogy. When you look at the invention of the first electric motor in the late 1800s, it was only possible to build a very large one. And it was very, very expensive, and therefore it could only be cost justified for the most expensive or large applications. And the electric motor really took its next step in proliferation when somebody hooked a long shaft to it and ran it down the center of a factory, through a series of belts and pulleys, brought that power down to maybe 15 or 20 individual workstations, thereby cost justifying or sharing that horsepower among some medium-sized applications. But the electric motor really achieved a true proliferation in the society with the invention of the fractional horsepower electric motor. And at that point, the horsepower could be brought directly to where it was needed on a personal scale, cost justified for a small number of things. And we see the same thing, the same evolution, if we examine the history of computing. The first computer, ENIAC, in 1946, was designed primarily for weather and ballistic calculations, very large tasks. And the next revolution in computing was in the 1960s with the invention of what's called time sharing. In essence, sharing one of these very large computers with maybe 40 or 50 terminals scattered through a company, and thereby cost justifying it for medium-sized applications. What we think the personal computer industry is about is the invention of the fractional horsepower computer, something that can be cost justified on the personal level, something that weighs 12 pounds that you can throw out the window if you don't like. And it's really changing the way that people interact with computers. There's a one-on-one relationship that develops between one person and one computer.
Now, when you use the term a personal computer, you're avoiding the term home computer. Yes. For a deliberate reason, right?
Right. We view
We segment our market really into 4 major segments: education, professional small business, home consumer, and scientific industrial. Now, the home market hasn't really taken off. It's probably the smallest of those 4 I've listed. We view the home now not as a market really, but as a location in which personal computers are used for a variety of functions sometimes. In other words, you can use a personal computer to do some portfolio management on some stocks. You can use a personal computer to do some educational. Can I answer that question?
Sure,
Let me
yeah.
start over.
Okay, yeah, you can just pick it up and we'll oh, okay.
Great.
So, and you were, when you grew up, you say, we're still waiting for a question, and we'll pick it up there.
Great.
Okay, John? And when you use the term a personal computer, you're deliberately avoiding the use of the term home computer, aren't you?
Right. We view the home not really as a market yet. We view it more as a location. We sell a lot of personal computers that are used for financial analysis, for education in schools, for running laboratory experiments in universities and in scientific applications. And a lot of these personal computers are used in the home as a location, some of the time. But there's not enough specific applications to cost justify spending $1,000 to $3,000 for a personal computer to be used in the home yet. So we don't think the home is quite yet ready either culturally or economically.
What type of person would need a personal computer today of the type you offer?
Well, it gets back to the question of what is a personal computer again. Again, another analogy. There was an article in Scientific American in the early 70s which compared the efficiency of locomotion for various species of things on the planet. In other words, they measured how much energy it took for a bird to get from point A to point B compared with the energy it took a fish to get the same distance, and a goat and a person and all sorts of other things. And they ranked them. And it turns out the condor won. Condor was the most efficient, and man came in with a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. It's somewhat disappointing. But someone there had the insight to test the efficiency of man riding a bicycle. And man riding a bicycle was twice as good as the condor, all the way off the end of the list. And what it really illustrated was man's ability as a tool maker to fashion a tool that can amplify an inherent ability that he has. And that's exactly what we think we're doing. We think we're basically fashioning a 21st century bicycle here, which can amplify an inherent intellectual ability that man has and really take care of a lot of drudgery to free people to do much more creative work.
Does this mean, do you think that personal computers in the 21st century will be as much a part of a home as, say, a refrigerator, a vacuum cleaner?
We can look at what's happening right now. As an example, in the state of Minnesota, which is probably the leading state in the country, over 97% of the kids that graduate from high school have hands-on experience with an Apple before they graduate. Now, these kids are growing up learning how to use this new tool in many, many phases of their life. They're hitting college, the same thing's happening. And so, very rapidly, the process of the integration of personal computers into the society will be accomplished. Let me illustrate 2 other processes which have happened in our lifetime very similar to this. You probably haven't used a piece of carbon paper or seen a mimeograph machine in a while. And yet, the first Xerox machine was introduced less than 20 years ago. It'll be 20 years ago next month. And in 20 years, it's radically altered the way that we work. Another process, the HP 35, first scientific handheld calculator, was introduced by Hewlett-Packard in 1972. Well, we all know where that's gone in just 9 years. But another interesting sidelight is in 1978, the largest manufacturer of slide rules in the world stopped making them entirely because the market had gone away. 6 years. So we see that it is possible in our lifetimes for a process like this to radically influence the way that we work and even start to look at life.
When you say start to look at life, where is the impact going to be felt most? In the intellectual process, in the day-to-day living process that is running the household, in terms of the way you spend your leisure time? Is there any way to pinpoint one of those areas as being the most likely to?
What we have seen in almost all applications of personal computers that have happened to date, the industry is only 5 years old, but we've shipped, in excess of 150,000 personal computers ourselves. We've seen a dramatic increase in the creativity of people in dealing with a problem. Rather than doing the drudgery, rather than using traditional tools, people are freed to think about the conceptual issues involved and the creative issues involved, and use the computer actually to plow through the drudgery. This is in education, where students can actually learn at their own pace, where they can interact with a computer rather than just having a one-way communication through the medium of television or books. They can actually interact with the medium. We're seeing this in the professional sphere, where we no longer have, as an example at Apple, we no longer have secretaries at Apple. We have what we call area administrators. They're using the computers for all their word processing. They do all departmental budgeting on it. We do our entire forecasting using our own tools. And we're actually changing job descriptions based on allowing people to do more creative work rather than more work.
You mentioned that the calculators eliminated in at least one case the need for slide rules, that your secretarial job descriptions are changing.
Yes.
Are there any other major areas that personal computers are going to change in that direction that most people would be familiar with or make obsolete?
Well, I don't think personal computers are making anything obsolete in the sense of what people do. I think they're enriching what people do. Again, there is a common conception that people have of computers, which is more along the lines of 1984. Very large, very centralized computers. And I know the privacy issue is very, very hot in the media these days. But what we're finding is that when people actually see what a personal computer is, they see something that looks, approximately, they can hold it in their hands, it weighs 12 pounds. Again, they can throw it out the window if they don't like it. And it is very decentralized. It's very democratic. And it's something that completely is almost the opposite of the 1984 conception we have. And what we're finding is it is enriching people's lives. It is freeing people to do things we think people do best.
Is there any basis for comparing you to, say, Mattel and Atari, or is that like comparing apples and oranges?
We describe our business as really making tools and not toys. And we're really interested in providing that bicycle type of tool to the marketplace. I think some other people are more interested in providing an entertainment value, which is valuable, of course, too, but that's not our business.
Is there a difference in your technology as well?
There's something happening, actually, in the whole personal computer industry with all the serious competitors. Again, this process of integrating personal computers into the society is going to take maybe 10 years to conclude. And we, of course, want to continue to sell more and more and more computers. The key to that will be to make the computers easier and easier and easier to use. And the way that that's going to happen is we're going to be spending more and more of the computer power in the box to adapt the computer more to the way people are familiar with doing things, so that people have to adapt less to the way computers do things. And therefore, it will require a more sophisticated computer. That's the paradox in our industry right now. To make a computer simpler to use requires a more sophisticated computer. That's part of the reason the home market doesn't exist yet, because if you think about it, the home user needs the easiest to use computer, therefore the most sophisticated, therefore one of the most expensive. So we expect prices not to come tumbling down in the next few years, but actually to you'll get more computer power for the same dollar. You might even see prices increase a little. But the computers are going to get dramatically easier to use. So,
you and your partner grew up in this valley, Silicon Valley. What kind of culture existed here that's led to all of the building that's gone on, all the companies that have been created?
This Santa Clara Valley, which we all refer to affectionately as Silicon Valley, is probably one of the finest examples of what I call sort of an entrepreneurial risk culture anywhere in the world. And both my partner Steve Wozniak and I both grew up here. And really some of the people that founded companies around the area, Hewlett and Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard and others, were really our role models, our heroes. And we like to think that we're carrying on that tradition.
What is there left for you to do now that you're 25, your company's gone public, it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars?
Well, we don't really feel we've accomplished what we set out to do yet. We've set out to really help lead this process of getting personal computers into the society, and I think has to be in 5 years.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, the only thought I had, though, is...
Anytime, yeah. Go ahead.
Sure.
Even though you and the video game manufacturers really exist in two different worlds,
Yes.
is the fact that children and people in general are becoming so familiar with the use of these video games and the simple computers that go along with them going to make people more aware of personal computers in the future, do you think, and better able to deal with them?
Sure. Matter of fact, it's not even only occurring in the video game area, it's occurring, as an example, with an automated bank teller. People are interacting more and more with intelligent devices, whether it be an intelligent game or an intelligent bank teller or whatever. And you're already seeing it in society now. People are becoming more and more familiar with interacting with intelligent electronic devices. And that's changing things culturally. It's a step along the way.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Did you get what you want? Is that?
Yeah, that was good, and I think it's doesn't tie you to them, and yet professionally, but I think it does to the idea that Los Angeles, just because there's so much work on that coast, and then the other 5 or 6 months, in between.
Where exactly are you?
What? Do you need Steve talking, or do you want me to re-ask? Okay, you don't even need to re-answer. What they'll do is take this and splice it in.
Great.
You know how it works.
So I don't need to talk.
No.
Great.
Just nod or
Just don't
something.
fall
So when they make the edit, it'll look as if
Yeah,
you're make
right.
some physical motions. But yeah, all right.
I'm going to begin with the re-asks, okay, John?
Great.
When you began to develop this business 5 years ago, what sort of need for personal computers did you observe?
All right. Steve, when you began to develop the business about 5 years ago, what needs for personal computers did you observe then?
When you use the word personal computer, you intentionally avoid the word home computers.
Yeah. Now, when you use the term personal computer, you deliberately avoided the use of the term home computer, right?
What type of person would have a personal computer today? What type of individual would have a personal computer?
What type of individual would buy a personal computer today?
This was just
That's
a
right.
statement.
We always get a lot of good answers. There's re-asks here, too.
This was just a statement. Does this mean that personal computers in the 21st century would be as ordinary as, say, a refrigerator?
Okay. Does this mean that personal computers in the 21st century would be as ordinary a part of a household as, say, a refrigerator, a vacuum cleaner?
I can't crack this guy up.
Oh, yes, you can. I used to be the easiest guy. That's another story. I'm not going to tell it where they'll have it on tape. Somebody will pull it out in a blooper reel.
I'm not rolling with it.
Yeah, sure you're not.
Okay, next question.
Okay.
Where is the impact of personal computers going to be felt the most?
Okay. Where's the impact of personal computers going to be felt most in the future?
And then there was a lengthy question that had to do with calculators and secretarial jobs and any other changes he might foresee in the future.
Okay. If calculators are making slide rules obsolete, and your computer is allowing you to redefine your secretarial jobs into other categories, more creative categories, what other types of things are going to change as a result of personal computers or be made obsolete? That do it?
Even though you and the video manufacturers, or Apple and the video game manufacturers exist in different worlds, is there some awareness of computer technology that comes from?
Even though Apple and the video game manufacturers really exist in two different worlds, are these video games, in a sense, getting people more accustomed to the idea of personal computers? Okay.
That's the end.
Great.
I need some John.
Now I will listen to Steve, right?
Steve,
And you can say anything. This is the fun part.
Yeah.
Where do you vacation in this area, or do you go other parts of the world?
Conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't taken a vacation in a long time. So. that's how I measure whether I'm successful, is whether I could take off for 3 months. So far, I'm not successful.
Yeah. Well, someday.
Oh yeah.
How do you build an executive core around a company like this? Obviously, you and your partner had to take an awful lot of responsibility for.
Well, one of the things that we always did was we tried to hire somebody who was better than us in a particular thing. That's still my greatest joy around here, is when we hire somebody that's better than I'll ever be at one particular thing. So you try to hire just really outstanding people that are they're actually much too senior for the current jobs that you have. But you know you're planning to grow so fast that in 6 months the job's just right for them, and in a year they're scrambling to keep up with it. So we've grown at, several 100% a year. And it's a very, very different type of environment than most people are used to. We've got a whole generation of managers here that are trained to grow at 400% a year. And they'd be bored stiff growing at 30% a year.